What if you wrote a one-act play, entered it in a contest, and won, and then the play became so successful that it was being acted out in a festival in New York City? That is the writing success story that you are about to hear about on Writer Talks. Welcome to Writer Talks. I'm Elizabeth Ann Atkins, and I interview the winners of our monthly writing contests. And today we have the amazing Claude Clayton Smith. He's the writer of The Waiter, which will be performed this summer in a virtual festival in New York City. Welcome, Claude.
Well, thank you, Elizabeth. Thanks for having me.
You're so welcome. I'm thrilled to talk with you because you are doing what so many people dream about, not only writing, but also being recognized for your excellent storytelling skills. And The Waiter, which is about a married couple, 20 years celebrating their anniversary in Paris and having some bickering moments at a cafe, is very engaging. So, Claude, can you talk about your inspiration for the play?
Oh, yeah. Actually, this success is all your fault for publishing it, putting it in the Two Sisters anthology. But the play actually is a mini version of a full-length play that was staged in competition 20 years ago in Ohio, and in a festival run by the Ohio Arts Council. And after that production, it actually became a professional production in Connecticut. And the director who did it there said to me that, a lot of playwrights will often start with a one-act play and then expand it, to a full act. But I did just the opposite with this because I saw your competition. I saw your ad and I said, gee, 10 pages, I think, was all you allowed, had to be a short play. So, and I remembered what that director had said. So I thought, okay, I'll see if I can boil down this full length play and just get at its essence, which I was able to do. And how did that come about? Well, in my younger days, I traveled in Paris a number of times. And then after my wife and I were married, we were over there with the Hemingway Society, and we were on a bus, I think, going to one of the Hemingway events. And there was this very young woman. Elaine and I had been married probably 25 years then. There was this very young woman sitting next to her, side by side, and so suddenly I was having these flashbacks of being there when I was a single man, so I thought, what could I do with that, so I spun it into the play that you have, and made it, I think, a kind of frictional thing that comes up in all relationships, so, and I think the feminists love it because of the ending, but we're not given anything.
Right. Yes, absolutely. You can go over to Two Sisters.
Yep.
Checking stories, Claude Clayton Smith, and you can read The Waiter for yourself,
Yeah.
or you can watch it being performed. So, can you talk about how that came into being, Claude?
Yeah, a couple of months ago, I saw an ad for a free, I love these free things, Zoom workshop for playwrights. And so I've never considered myself a playwright. I got into it indirectly because once I was asked to write a screenplay based on one of my books, and I found it quite easy and refreshing not to have to do all the trappings of fiction. So after I got done with that, the film was never made, but I had the experience and I thought I should try a play. And I tried a play, and now I've forgotten your question. Go ahead.
Oh, how did your play get picked up by a New York
By New York.
theater
Yeah. So,
company?
right. So I went to the workshop and I just had one question because I have all these plays in the box, so to speak. And I asked the woman who was doing it, where do you find out about who wants plays? There's got to be some clearinghouse, like any writer knows AWP or newpages.com and the Chronicle, the Writer's Chronicle, all those sources. But she said, well, you got to join PWC, Playwright Center. So all right, so I joined it, and the first page of the of opportunities that came up was this New York Equity Library Festival in New York. So I said, gee, I've got a short play. And so I took your play, sent it in. And believe it or not, that afternoon, they said, you're in. And I said,
Wow.
good. I thought, okay, you take the play and someone's going to put it on for me. No, you have to get someone and video it and get the actors and everything. And I don't do that. I'll just write it. So I contacted the director of the guy who 20 years ago had done the full-length professional play. And he said, well, I know a few people who are into this. And he sent an email. Next day, that was on board. So as we speak, it's it's being studied and practiced, whatever, rehearsed, I guess. And I'm just glad I don't have to be there, because these are professional people in Connecticut who know what they're doing. So they'll be back in touch with me sometime in August, and I think I've got an August 28th deadline for sending that off. So
Oh, that's
and then
awesome.
it'll be, all of them will be on YouTube, Equity Library Theater of New York Summer Festival.
Oh, beautiful. Congratulations. That
Yeah,
is amazing.
thank you.
You're welcome. So, from your mind, an idea, dialogue, now human beings, actors, are actually going to be portraying your story for all to enjoy. That is so cool.
Well, you know, it can also drive you nuts, because when my very first play was done, you know, I'm sitting there watching it, and oh, how nice! Here are your words on the stage, and then I'm thinking, oh, gee, they changed that line, you know. Well, no, they didn't change it. They just forgot it, you know. And then,
Uh-oh.
but they would ad lib, and it was really well received. And then the next night I go, and it's a totally different vibe and a totally different performance. And this professional director in Connecticut said, that's theater, you know. I said, oh, that's theater. Every night it's different. It's sort of like teaching, I guess.
Right. Excellent segue, because you have a quality of excellent writers, which is being a lifelong learner. So not only are you a retired professor at multiple highly respectable universities, you are also the holder of multiple degrees. Can you talk about all the degrees you have? It's really impressive.
Oh, my dad used to say, I've got more degrees than a thermometer. I'm very fortunate, because I knew in junior high that I wanted to teach and I wanted to write, and I was able to do that. And I did my undergraduate work at Wesleyan in Connecticut, and I'll never forget it, because I've taken a course in a short story, and the professor gave us a chance of writing a paper about other writers or writing a short story. So I wrote a short story about my grandfather, who was quite an amazing character. He drank a little bit too much, but he always made it to work, and storyteller in his own right. And that story was then published in our campus literary mag at Wesleyan. And I actually cried when I wrote the last line of that, because it was so cathartic, you know. And then I went off to Yale to get an MAT, Master of Arts in Teaching, because I always wanted to be a high school teacher. And so the first thing I did after Yale, I started teaching at Churchill High School in Montgomery County, Maryland. Very excellent high school. I taught Caspar Weinberger's daughter, you know, Congressman Kemp, his son, all the beautiful people. First thing I did down there was start a creative writing program, mainly because I had never had that opportunity in high school or in college. So the first year we did it, my students won everything in the state of Maryland that you could win, because nobody else was doing this.
Uh-huh.
And the second year they won national scholarships, you know, in the national competition. So, and some of them were actually getting published. And so then I got jealous of my own students. So I went off to the writer's workshop in Iowa. And one of the things that happened, I had to take one more education course in order to teach back at that high school in Maryland. And I figured I'd get it out of the way there. And so I went to the library and I was going to write a paper on what other high school teachers were doing in creative writing. I
Wow.
figured, okay, let's see how they do it. And I was just flying by the seat of my pants, doing the course as I would want it to be done. So I went to the library and the librarian said, oh, the NEA Journal just put out a list of the best high school creative writing teachers in the nation. And so I looked and my name was on the list.
Oh,
Why? Because of those national competitions that my students had won, you know. So,
wow.
but those days in Iowa were crazy. I was there in the spring of 1970, Kent State, and
Oh,
Cambodia, and the university shut down early because of rioting on campus. And one day they just announced, they were sending us all home to our parents who didn't want us either. So I went back, finished up there, and then went back to teaching again. And finally, I felt I wanted to teach in college because I would have more time to write. I was teaching 5 classes a day at the high school level, coaching 3 sports, basketball, soccer, and golf, running the literary magazine, and I just had no time. And then I had just gotten married. So, no, actually, I didn't get married. I went off to Carnegie Mellon for a DA, a Doctor of Arts, and because I'd heard, I didn't want to do a PhD. I can't do that research stuff, but a DA would allow for a creative thesis. Okay, so I said, that's it. I'm going to Carnegie Mellon, and not only got my creative thesis and my DA, but my wife Elaine, who, as I mentioned when we were chatting, became right away my first reader and editor, and has been doing that for 44 years. So,
wow. That's
yeah,
awesome. That's
yeah.
so cool. Teamwork makes the dream work.
I like that. I like that. Yeah, I'm very lucky because I've never really been one for creative writing groups. For all that Iowa is touted as the Iowa Writers Workshop, I think I learned more from my mentor at Carnegie Mellon that I did out there. Tips. I mean, he said something that changed my life. I was working on this novella I did for my dissertation, and he sent it back to me. And in the margin, he said, I can't see this. You need an image here. Eureka. The reader has to be able to see it, so
Hmm.
you need an image there. And so I learned to get specific, and that has made the difference.
Wow. I love it. I love it. So you are the author of, I think it's 4 novels. Is that correct?
No, one novel, let me do it this way: 2 children's books, 3 books of creative nonfiction, a book of poems, and 4 books I've edited of native Siberian
Oh,
translations into English. I may have missed something in there. I like to go 1, 2, 3, 4.
oh,
Yeah,
that's awesome. That's phenomenal.
yeah.
So,
I think though, I think I'm a jack of all trades and master of none.
oh,
A couple years ago, I was doing a reading. Actually, I was back at ONU for a reading and talking with students. And one of the students said, well, gee, what is your favorite genre? Because I literally have published in all genres. And I had to think, and I said, words, words, words are my genre. And as long as there are words there, the form can change. It doesn't matter, You want, and then the length, you with 2 sisters, you want 10 pages, I'll give you 10 pages. I'll cut something down. But what I actually a lesson about that, one of my travel books, I just got an email yesterday from a guy who read is reading my travel book. And I did this trip around the United States in a Corvette in 1999, solely on the interstates. I just outlined the map of the country because I love the interstates, and I remember when they were built through my hometown in Connecticut. Um, I had the book, and then I wanted to enter it somewhere, and I was going to send it to AWP, but they only allowed like 200 pages, and the book was 400 pages. So I said, well, I'll edit it down. You know, the book is called Lapping America. So I did a version that I called Lap Light, light, a light
Oh,
version.
nice.
And I sent that to an agent, and he said, geez, I really like this, but I wish it were longer. I said, I got the whole thing over here. And I sent him that. And so we published that in 2006 to coincide with the 50th anniversary of the interstate system, you know. So that was
Wow.
exciting. And in fact, so really since 1999, I was thinking of doing a sequel to that book.
Uh-huh.
And son of a gun, I finally came up with the idea of I was going to do Route 66 from Chicago to LA, because I love the
Oh.
interstates, and Route 66 is mainly Interstate 40 for a lot of the ways. You know, but
Oh.
it traces. So I I bought a black Corvette, and then was ready to go, and then COVID hit, and
Oh.
everything shut down, and including my book, and I had to sell the Corvette because I couldn't, you know, afford to keep it over the winter. We have a 2-car garage, and you know, Elaine wouldn't leave her car out in the snow, and I wouldn't leave mine out. So, and
Oh.
really, I couldn't afford it. I mean, the Corvette is really an American cliche, but I just wanted one since I was a kid, and now I've had two, but for not very long.
Oh, can you please explain what's the intrigue about the interstates?
Well, I tell you exactly. One was built through Stratford, Connecticut, and I read in high school. I read Travels with Charlie, and this is great, going out to see America, you know. And then of course I read Blue Highways, and boy, this is great, going out to see America. But in about 1960, they built I-95 right through my hometown, right through the center of town, and I remember going on it for the first time with my older brother. We went down to exit 32 by the Shakespeare Theater that burned down a couple of years ago by arson. And we went up that ramp, and I remember this wide ribbon of concrete opening before me. We were blasting off like who was it that did the first trip into space, you know, in outer space. And I just always wanted to. I love the interstates, the wide open. And so the crux of that book was that you could meet just as many real Americans on the interstate as you can anywhere else, and I proved it. I
Oh.
interviewed over 100 people. Many of them were foreigners, and I did the outline, more than 10,000 miles in I think 33 days. So I was averaging about 600 miles a day, but I wasn't stopping. I was feeling the country beneath the wire, beneath the tires, and so I was just totally surprised that this guy would write me, because he had been at a conference at ONU where I'd been teaching and saw the book there. I guess it's still in the bookstore, picked it up and just came to it and read it and sent me an email. So that's one of the delights of reading. I'm sure you get this all
Yes.
the time when people write to you.
Oh, the influence of literature on our lives, on our minds, on our views, on our dreams is just profound. So I would love for you to please share some tips for people who are
Okay.
aspiring writers
Right.
about how to succeed, how to believe in themselves, how to persevere despite rejection.
Yeah, well, very good. I used to go when I was teaching to uh, conferences around college conferences and speak on this very thing. And the first thing I would always do was bring a list, a handout of places, resources that anybody should know. You know, students can join AWP. That's the Association of Writing Programs, of all the programs in the nation. You should go to newpages.com daily. Every day they have calls for in all poetry, nonfiction, everything. They have writing contests, book contests. AWP puts out the Writer's Chronicle, which has articles about writing and plotting and poetry, and then join the well, Poets and Writers does the same thing, that magazine. And then my newly found playwriting center has great opportunities for everybody. But for the novice writer, I mean, be specific, write what you know. These are all cliches, but they're true. All of my books came out of my own backyard. My novel, The Stratford Devil, was about a woman who was hanged for witchcraft in my hometown of Stratford. Then the book Quarter Acre of Heartache was about an Indian reservation 3 miles from my backyard. Indian reservation that was trying to be sabotaged and done away with for a land grab. I've done 2 little golden books, which they were out in 1983 and 1984. I wrote one for each of my little toddlers at the time. Okay. And I still get letters from little kids around the country because the books are recycled and they're in the libraries and people pick them up at book fairs. And one of the nice things about golden books, little books for children, those are printed at like 200,000 copies a year. And they go over a 7-year interval for the age of the newborn child. And then they recycle them and they go into translation. So that's anyone who wants to make money in writing, which of course why we all do it. No, write a good children's book. We got a lot of mileage out of those books. So write what you know, be specific, and read, and read writers until you find one that you absolutely love. And fall in love with, and then try to learn to see how he or she does it, on the page. My problem was that I fell in love in college with John Updike, and never published anything till I stopped trying to write like John Updike and just found my own style. Ironically, when I was at Iowa, I had a poem published about a high school teacher trying to teach a John Updike short story. And that got to Updike. He sent me a letter about it. And when I was at Virginia Tech, I brought him there to read. And then when I was at Ohio Northern, I brought him there to read too. And I was just too much under his spell. He was such a great writer. A greater writer than the feminists didn't like him very much. My wife, Elaine, we've had dinner with him a couple of times, and she said, when I meet that guy, I'm going to shake his hand and then kick him in the shins.
I like Elaine. She's fun.
She never did it, of course, and we were all in awe of him. But I brought him to Ohio Northern University in Ada, where we have the Wilson Football Factory, where they make all the NFL footballs. So I arranged for Updike a VIP tour, and we went through, and he wrote a short story about it, and I wound up in the short story.
Oh wow!
Right.
Fun.
And I'm also mentioned in another one of his books about when he talks about coming to Ada, Ohio, and going through the football factory and our little reception that we had there. So. I've been fortunate enough to meet a lot of these writers that I've always looked up to. I brought to ONU, that was my job, to bring in some major writers, and Joyce Carol Oates, Edward Albee, writers like that every year, so our students could meet them and sit down with them and be impressed. So, and that will, of course, feed my own writing and my own inspiration.
I love that. That's wonderful. So what's the biggest challenge that you have with writing?
There's too much to write. I've got too much going right now, Actually, saying no for me, because I'm editing 2 books right now. I've just finished editing a book by the grandfather of a friend of mine who was a world famous physician, and actually founded the psychology department here at UW-Madison. And in the early 1900s, he was the doctor who found out that you could cure mental illness or treat mental illness with chemistry. And so he was world renowned for that. And he went on he had to get away from hard research, went on a fishing trip, Gulf of Mexico, off an old, this was like 1925. They got hit a reef, got picked up by the Mexicans, thrown in jail. So that's a crazy adventure book. And so I've just finished that, and I'm looking for a publisher. And I think it'll be a great Wisconsin book and a great book for everybody. And I've got another friend who's my own age, who's I grew up with, and who is a world famous periodontist, lectured all over the world, China, wherever, and I'm editing his memoir. So I want to get back to my own stuff. And I guess the hardest thing for me is to, when I write something, to let it sit a while before I send it out. And that's why I'll give it to Elaine. And I know now that no matter what I give her, on every page, she'll find at least one typo. And then that, well, she's great copy editor, but then I'm interested not about the typos, although I'll correct them, but does this work for her? Because she's spent about 12 years in a public library in Ohio, and would pick up the books as they came over the desk, and just open them and start to reading. And for some reason, she'd put this one aside. I don't want to read that one. Next one, oh, well, this is really good, but she couldn't say why. So I'm waiting for when she looks at my stuff and says, this paragraph, I don't know what's wrong. I said, okay, I'll fix it, So her ear and her eye are just terrific. And I have that as a team. And yet for beginning writers, or I know lots of writers who are in writers groups, more power to them. It was enough for me at the Iowa workshop to sit there and see stories torn apart, blown apart, people, stand up and scream and run out of the room. I mean, they took it seriously, and as you should, but I mean, books went from my own class, several of my sections that I was in, right to New York, right to publishing. And I remember when I was there, I said, boy, I'm going to buy a book from all of my friends when they get published. And I had to stop that because I was going broke,
Oh, wow, that's fun.
So that's why at Carnegie Mellon, this one guy who said, I can't see this. Be specific. Change my life. So those are all good tips. And if anyone's interested, I've written all this out in a published interview. It's on my website in much greater detail than me blabbing here.
So I'll put a link to your website in the description box, as well as your winning play on the twosisterswriting.com website, so people can read that. Wonderful. And I am so grateful that you've joined me here tonight. Do you have any last words to inspire all the writers out there?
If you're going to be a writer, you'll be writing. So don't listen to me. Go write. I mean, nobody tells me. I get up. I put in about 3 hours a day. And people who come to me and they want to write, I say, well, what have you written? And if you're going to be a writer, something's compelling you to do it. I have some really great writer friends, and they know what I mean. And other people, I hope they'll go to these resources that I've mentioned and take them seriously, because there's a whole world out there, but also a market that wants to take advantage of you, and anybody can be published these days. You can publish your own book. And that's something that I don't like, So
you don't like that?
Well, because of there's no quality control,
Oh,
you see what I mean? You put up the money, and there's your book, And so then what do? Well, now you go to your Christmas card list. You see what I mean? So you want a contract in time with an advance and some publicity, but it only goes step by step. And what I love the most, I mean, my joy in retirement has been that I have been contacted by one student from each of the 4 different places I've taught at. Churchill High, Ohio Northern University, Virginia Tech, and I was writer in residence at Illinois College. Out of the blue, these people contacted me because they were in my creative writing class, and I've worked with all of them. and they're being published, because they want to do it. And if you want to do it, you will do it. And then when you ask for help from someone, you'll get the help,
I
So,
love it.
yeah,
Powerful, powerful guidance. Claude Clayton Smith, award-winning writer, published novelist, editor, phenomenal playwright. Thank you for joining me here on Writer Talks.
thank you, Elizabeth. My pleasure.
You're welcome. I wish you all the best and much, much success, especially with The Waiter in its performed state. So, and thank you all of you for joining us here on Writer Talks, where you got to meet the amazing writer Claude Clayton Smith, who shared so much wisdom. I hope that you've been taking notes. You can watch the replay because there was a richness of material here that can help any writer, and especially the wisdom that said, if you're a writer, just write. It's real simple. It's a calling. And that's why we love to talk about writing here on Writer Talk. So please give us a thumbs up to like the video, subscribe to the channel. You can also follow me on Twitter at the number 2 Sisters Writing. You can also follow me on Twitter at Elizabeth Atkins. Hop over to twosisterswriting.com and get your copies of our international anthologies, and you can read The Waiter there or read the winning play on twosisterswriting.com. So excited. It's really fun. And you can also go over to twosisterswriting.com and enter our contest. So you too can be a winner of our monthly contest and get published in our international anthologies. So I'm Elizabeth Ann Atkins with Two Sisters Writing and Publishing, and I wish you happy reading and happy writing.